Hey guys, today we're going to continue reading Counting by 7's, and you're not going to need to do anything in your ELA notebook today. Your job is to just sit back and relax while we read chapter 6 together. Here we go. I sat in an airless office/trailer and stared at Mr. Del Duke. His head was very round, and most human heads are not round. Very, very few, in fact, have any real spherical quality. But this chubby, bearded man with bushy eyebrows and sneaky eyes was the exception. He had thick, curly hair and ruddy skin, and it looked to me as if he was at least a partial Mediterranean origin. I was very interested in the diet of these countries, the combination of olive oil, hearty vegetables, and cheese that come from goat's milk mixed with decent servings of fish and meat have been shown in numerous studies to promote longevity. That means a long life. But Mr. Del Duke did not look so healthy. In my opinion, he was not getting enough exercise. I saw that he had a substantial belly under his loose-fitting shirt, and weight carried around the middle is more deleterious than extra pounds in the booty. Yet, culturally speaking today, men with bigger booties are considered less desirable than a man with a pot belly, which no doubt is wrong from the evolutionary point of view. I would have liked to have taken his blood pressure. He started by saying that he did not want to discuss my test scores, and that's all he talked about. For a long time, he did not say a single word, and that made him talk more, about a lot of nothing. It was hot and stuffy in this little office, so I stared at him, and I could see that he was sweating up a storm. Even his beard looked wet, and he was getting more and more agitated, and as he spoke, small dots of saliva lodged in the corner of his mouth. They were foamy and white. Mr. Del Duke had a large jar of jelly beans on his desk, and he didn't offer me any. I don't eat candy, but I was fairly certain that he did, and I guessed that he had the jelly beans to make it look like he was offering kids a treat, but in actuality he never did and went on his own jelly bean eating binges. I considered calculating how many jelly beans were in that glass container. The volume of one jelly bean, h pi d over 2 to the second power equals 2 centimeters times 3 in parentheses 1.5 centimeters divided by 2 in parentheses to the second power equals 3.375 or 27 over 8 cubic centimeters. But the jelly beans aren't perfect cylinders, they are irregular, so this formula was not accurate. It would have been more fun for me to try to count them by 7's. This sister is smart. I hadn't told my parents about meeting Principal Psoriasis from Sequoia, or that I would have to deal with some sort of school parole officer named Del Duke. I'm not sure why. It had been their idea to move schools, and I wanted them to think that things were going well, or as well as possible. So I was now officially duplicitous, and that didn't feel good. Someone who's duplicitous is someone who hides stuff from others. The middle school years were supposed to be, according to literature, about an emotional separation from parents, and I figured lying was laying a good groundwork for that. But it wasn't as if I had eaten something that was giving me indigestion, and that burning sensation extended beyond my stomach and moved upward where it lodged into my neck, right where I swallowed. My parents didn't know any of my test-taking drama at Sequoia because I destroyed the evidence. I erased the message from the school that was on our home phone voicemail, and my parents always forgot to check it, so that wasn't a big deal. But what was even more deceitful was that I hacked into my mom's email and I answered the principal's note about going to see the district counselor, so I would just have to put up with this stomach queasiness because I deserved it. The round-headed counselor/warden finally stopped talking. He was actually worn out, and he folded his short little arms defensively over his ball of a belly, and then after more sweaty silence on both of our parts, he actually had a good idea. I'm going to say a word, and then I want you to say the first word that comes to your head, and I'm not saying a word as a question, it's something else. Let's try to do this very quickly. He sucked in a lot of air and added, "Think of this as a game." Del Duke didn't know that my experience in this arena was very limited, but I had found myself to be shockingly competitive, so for the first time since I stepped into the room, I felt mild enthusiasm. He wanted to play a word game, and I was certain that I could beat him in chess in fewer than 6 moves, but I had only played against a computer and not often, because chess is one of those things that I know can become obsessive. I played once for 20 hours straight and experienced signs of mild psychosis. Mr. Del Duke leaned forward in his chair and dramatically said, "Chocolate." And I was interested in the benefits of chocolate, so I said, "Antioxidant." Then he tapped his foot like he was accelerating a car and said, "Piano," and I said, "Concierto." And the day before, I had heard this kid at school shout to a group of boys in the hall, "Game on!" And I wanted to shout that now, but it didn't quite feel appropriate. Mr. Del Duke tried to write down what he and I said, but he was struggling. Fortunately, he gave up and decided just to play the game. He said space, I said time. He said dark, I said matter. He said bing, I said bang. He said car, I said topography. He said mouse, I said wireless. He said white, I said corpuscle. He said single, I said source. He said seed, I said embryo. He said pi, and I said 3.14159265335897932338462643383327. But I said the number very, very fast, and I stopped on the second 7 because, of course, that was my favorite number. Mr. Del Duke then loudly shouted, "You animal!" and it scared me. I don't like loud things, and I was silent for a very long time, but then I finally managed to find my voice, and I said, "Lemur." Then his eyes grew to a sort of dazed for an instant, and then he mumbled, "Female lemurs are in charge of the troop." This was an accurate statement, and if there is conflict in the group, the female lemurs are always the ones who fight it out, and because of this, the female leader gets the best food and the preferred sleeping area. And I now looked at him hard. Do you see the comparison here, friends? Compare Willow to the lemur. Not everyone knows that a lemur is a primate found only on the island of Madagascar, and it was possible that he was not the toadstool that he appeared to be. He then ran both of his hands through his curly mop of hair, and that made it double in size, and that has happened to my hair before too, so I totally understood. I left the meeting confused, and I knew that he knew that I was different. Mr. Del Duke was not friend material because he was of the wrong age, and, female lemurs notwithstanding, we appeared to have absolutely nothing in common. But as I walked away from the district headquarters parking lot, I decided that I would come back and see him again. Mr. Del Duke was testing me, but not the way he thought. I believed he somehow needed me, and I liked that feeling. That night at the dinner table, my mom and dad asked me how it was going at Sequoia, and I said, "The experience is evolving." My parents both smiled, and their eyes were still anxious. My mom's voice was tighter than usual, and she said, "Is there anyone special you enjoyed meeting?" And for the briefest moment, I questioned whether she knew about the aptitude test. I took a bite of my artichoke souffle, and I finished chewing before answering, "I met someone who interests me." And my parents perked up. This was big news to them, and Mom tried to appear not so eager. "Can you tell us more?" I had to be careful here. If I didn't want a colossal stomach ache, I knew I had to use a version of the truth. This afternoon was my first encounter. Viewed as a clinical trial, I'm in phase 0, which is when microdosing takes place. I'll let you know how it develops. And then I asked to be excused from the table. We'll move on to chapter 7 next.